to understand that, you have to understand that in the mid-90s, a pedestrian action committee started working on pedestrian access in the town. And they recommended a capital plan for the city. That plan was adopted, I think, in '96 and then updated in 2002. Okay. And about that same time, we got sued, and we ended up in a settlement agreement in 2004. That ADA settlement agreement is on the webpage. Okay. The settlement agreement required a number of things. In some parts of it, it lists specific, I believe it lists specific intersections that have to be done in that, and those projects that they worked on.
Yeah, it listed the way it's stated, and you've read it. Julio would be familiar with it also. Julio Avial was our city manager at the time. That it said, correct these areas and everything else. That's basically what it says.
The premise was dealing with high traffic areas first. Okay, like Duval, we immediately went out and started making improvements to Duval and other high traffic. It talked about government facilities and having to, not only the access to government facilities, but the bathrooms and door handles and other public areas on public facilities that had to be brought into compliance. So we had two tracks that we had to respond to, if I could. So when you want to stop and get some questions in, we can do that as well. I saw a hand already, so please. You had a question?
Yes, actually I have a couple. ADA compliance for this particular property. It's obvious that because this is a property that requires to be ADA compliant versus because it's a city property, it's leased for a non-profit, that's fine. But it's on this particular settlement, the accessible route shall be at least 36 inches wide. I measured the sidewalk, it is over 43 inches.
Well, I would like to respond to that.
Okay.
It says
My ADA expert.
minimum 36 inches wide.
Right.
Okay, and when you have that minimum 36 inches wide, there's other portions of the code that you're missing. You have to have turning areas, which are a minimum 5 foot in there. We deal with driveways that you have to provide an apron. And if you have a driveway, how are you going to get an apron?
So why does this one particular property have to affect well, it's not affecting Windsor, technically Windsor to Margaret has already been changed. They're no longer putting a sidewalk on this side of the property, they're going to repair the other one.
We're going to replace the other one.
Right, and for what
And
reason?
bring that into
I don't
ADA
understand,
compliance.
probably parking, okay, but this particular property is the questionable property, because this is the reason why we're here, is to make this ADA compliant, because it is part of the city,
Well,
correct? The city put a fence up.
Yes, plus.
Well, can I finish
yes,
can I
plus.
finish what I was,
Sure,
okay.
sure, Lorraine.
The city put that fence up on city property in error, okay? That fence, when I moved here, there was no fence around this property at all. Okay, the reason why there was is because we had this crazy chicken lady over here complaining, and that's the truth.
I lived
It's
next
the
door to
truth.
that crazy chicken
And this is
lady.
not, this historic building, I understand it's a historic building, but it was modified, and I understand why, because it was being used. Okay, so it has an elevator, it has this, it has the hose wash, but it's not technically a historic building anymore per se, because of all the add-ons. Why cannot this not be made a parking lot for the museum?
That one I can't answer.
Okay,
That
but
one-
that's a good question,
Yeah,
because
and I believe
if
David-
this is the issue right here as to why we're, streets
Well, no, it's not, and that's what I tried
Yeah.
to say. It's that plus.
okay.
I mean, you've heard us discuss the
I want this
packed
thing open.
groups
It's in
and
here.
the
want to
walkable
see it.
Key West and the pedestrian safe community. This before the lawsuit settlement.
Okay.
This was on the list. And again, that list was made prior to my employment with the city. But
Is there a copy of that list? Because I couldn't get a prior.
Yeah, and we actually, last night, we did show it last night
And
in the slide presentation. You know, the
There was a
map
list
shown.
presented?
It was in the slide presentation. And
Okay, is it
unfortunately,
available
I do
online
not-
though? I apologize, I wasn't there, I was sick.
Yeah,
You don't know if it's...
I don't know, I didn't create it,
Okay.
but
I would like to see a prioritized list.
That depends. It's supposed to be done by,
My contract December 31st.
the contract says December 31st, but the delays that we have right now are going to push that into January.
And so, who pays the difference between it being on contract? Is there a penalty?
Well, that's an interesting issue, and I'd rather not get into it because it has nothing to do with the night, but the reality is the contractor has burned a substantial amount of time on this and not providing us deliverables. And so arguing that he's going to charge us for going into January for doing work that's required under the contract is a bit of a stretch. So the only thing we're going to pay extra for under this contract are things that we direct him to do out of scope, like flipping the sidewalk to the other side of the street. A small change.
Taking trees out that he wasn't aware of.
Pardon?
Taking trees out that he wasn't
Well,
aware of.
but I'm gonna save some walls that he had to take out, so I'll get it covered. Okay. So, and we have prices for transplanting and or removing trees, depending on which it is. So.
Really no answer to that question is we don't know how much more it's going to cost the city.
So there is transplanting involved with it.
That is true.
Okay.
Yes, what we have is,
I've been a contractor in construction for 13 years down here in the Keys, and we'd always have to have the tree commission come out every time we put a fence line in. If we hit a root, you got to move the post. You ain't damaging the tree.
And we were on the tree commission
Trees,
agenda on
if they
Monday.
are removed, they are going to get replaced.
Apparently.
But you're going to lose yard. You're going to lose yard, right?
I would definitely love to address that. We do have a total of 6 trees that are being removed. Most of them, or 3 of them, major trees. There's an almond tree in the 800 block that is actually going to be removed because of the flipping of the sidewalk to the other side. That also is in very poor condition. It was rated at a 30 or 40% by the tree commission. Then there is a mahogany in the 900 block that was in a bit better condition, but it received a 70% rating. And yes, that will be removed also. Then just past Wongson Alley, at this corner here, just a little bit, is the Royal Pension. That too will be removed. Then
My
there's
point is,
They be replaced.
they will be replaced, not necessarily in this project.
Well,
Okay. As far as
the tree commission...
What is that? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
It was advertised for
Well, who's
tomorrow.
that?
I don't understand how that happened. It was
I
advertised for
can't answer that.
tomorrow.
I did not deal with that. I do know that the tree
It was in the
commission
paper
meeting
for
was
the
on Monday.
17th. So
Anyway.
they voted to kill those trees
We
yesterday
have a Washington
without our
Tonian
knowledge.
and 2 oaks that are also going to
Totally ignored.
be removed.
Totally ignored.
Then we have 23 other plants that will be relocated.
Oh, I'm out of here.
Don't leave. I wanna respond to you about the fence. First of all, before we took the chain link fence down that was here, and we put this.
Oh, no,
wood
that's- the
about
fence
a
doesn't
year later,
bother
we
me
put
at
the wood
all.
up, and our nonprofit paid for this fence. The city didn't pay for it. I just want to clear this up.
Oh, I know you did. I understand that, but you put that fence on city property. You put that fence on city right away. You put it on city right away. You put it in the wrong spot.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I put where the fence was. It was a fence here.
Well, I understand that. And that's what they're all saying.
information.
I'm not saying you did something wrong, I'm saying if you did what everybody else
And we paid
does.
for it, no city didn't pay for it. That's what you're spreading around.
Just like any other fence that is
Your
encroaching
fence
on
is
the right
the
of way.
least of my concerns.
We'll
We
have
paid
to
for the
move
fence. I don't know who gave you that information. The
Put it
city
in the
paid.
wrong
The
spot.
city didn't pay for it. We paid for it.
It doesn't
I mean,
matter.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, Paul.
It's not an issue. Okay,
I
please.
just want to clear who's.
No,
you're right.
I don't need a
Keep going,
You're right.
we know somebody
You
lives
say what
there
you have
now,
to
do you want me
say.
to keep going?
Public meeting, you're
Now
welcome
we
to
have
say
somebody that
things.
lives on the property. Do you have permission for that? Just keep going. I wanna know who lives on this street.
There we go.
Who lives on the street at
Now I'm
Anita?
done.
I live on this street too. Who lives here on this street?
Yes.
I do.
Right here.
Yeah.
I've been here for 13 years.
Hey, Rich, raise your hand, you
And
live
she
here
just
too.
stated it
Raise
to
your
me
hand.
that
Rich
as far as them
living
tearing
in
the
the
fence
property.
down, it's not gonna,
I'm
the
done with it.
contractor's not responsible for putting the fence back. It's the homeowner responsible for putting the fence back.
Exactly.
That's what they told us.
Exactly.
It's asinine. It's
I would
Ridiculous.
really, truly
I
appreciate.
don't wanna
if
battle,
we
we're
could
neighbors,
have a
I want
civil
everybody to be happy.
because
God,
when everyone is starting to get riled and
we are riled.
doing this, we're not
You're
getting
cutting
it.
trees down, you're cutting down.
And what happens with the flooding?
Advertise it, you
Like I told
advertise
Mr.
a
Fernandez,
street
you're gonna put
permission meeting
channel
for
markers
tomorrow
up?
when you have it.
We know. Channel markers,
that's a good idea.
Shit, we got a swimming pool over here at the corner, you know what I mean? Kids can come out here and play.
Oh, Karen.
Navigate
the next
flood. What, 13,
And I know you
14
said
years
it's
ago
better.
that I've been here?
But it's still over the sidewalk. And you can ask anybody
Yeah, they're
that lives
raised.
there,
Yeah,
it's
they're
over
raised.
the sidewalk.
Exactly.
Even though you dug 9 wells or how many, it still doesn't work.
It got a lot worse.
You know,
These are fine.
Excuse me, can I ask you another question?
Yes.
This goes along with what Lorraine was saying about this property here being one of the focal points for having this sidewalk because this is a government property. And that's what I'm understanding.
Speak
So
up a little bit.
my question is that I understand that a parking lot is going in here. If that's the case, doesn't that negate the need to have the
No.
ADA sidewalk for this property? And if so, couldn't the sidewalk go across the street and be less of an impact to what we're seeing right now with this plan?
Let me respond, please. First of all, what I tried to explain to you is that 800 feet, according to the city attorney, was a weak argument. However, the overriding argument is that we were directed by the judge to come up with a list. That list, both in the 2002 Pedestrian Action Committee list, which was the basis for this other map, and the map that we came up with at the direction of the court, had Virginia Street from Windsor all the way. That's both sides of Virginia, that's not one side, okay? So the fact that we have money for this side of Virginia Street doesn't relieve us from coming back and doing that side of Virginia
It's
Street.
really hard
Doesn't
to believe that you're really going to put sidewalks on both sides. Couldn't you start on that side?
Yeah,
Has less of an impact, and then in 3 or 5 years, come back to this side.
One thing that most of you, and I know I have mentioned this at the past 2 meetings, there are just as many encroachments on that side of the street as there are on this side of the street. For example, in the 1100 block, our right-of-way, because of the encroachments on both sides, is under 40 feet wide.
Karen,
and
have
it's
you looked at
actually
the parking
50.
impact, though?
Yeah.
There are encroachment problems everywhere in Key West. But
Absolutely.
if you did put the sidewalk on that side, would you still be losing as much parking as you're losing on this side? That's a real problem for me.
All right, now's a good time for us to, by way of answering that question, to talk in detail about parking, okay? Because we've gone back after last night and laid out what the actual parking is going to be. We've counted what is there now, both legal, illegal, and non-conforming. Last night we were using a word that the city attorney cautioned us about this morning. We were using the illegal to apply to 2 classes. One is appropriate, one is more appropriate to call non-conforming, and I'll explain the difference. When you park on the corner and right against a stop sign, that's parking illegally. There's a state statute that requires you to be 30 feet back from the corner. The issue is a safety issue, line of sight. It impacts your ability to get ADA accessible sidewalks, legal ADA accessible sidewalks, because the pedestrian has to step out from behind a parked car and is exposed to the traffic immediately without the driver of the vehicle being able to see the pedestrian. Okay? So the illegal parking spots are those parking spots on the corner. The non-conforming parking spots, if you watched the slideshow last night, are the head-end parking. Okay? We've gone back and counted the maximum number of cars that you can pack in here. And then we've backed off the number that are illegal by the true definition of illegal, parked on the corner. Okay? And we counted those. And we also have a count on what we have designed in, where we expect the results to be at the end of the project, and both in parking spots for cars and for motorcycles and scooters. Okay? And can you quote those numbers for me?
Yeah, we actually have 4 full-size vehicles, more standard parking spaces. This is all based on standard sizes of parking spaces. We can accommodate 36 vehicles and also 32 scooter and or motorcycle parking spaces.
And if we could just please let us explain the numbers to you, then we'll answer the question.
But I would love to...
That's the design, just to emphasize. 36 and 32.
Yeah.
36 cars and 32 scooters or motorcycles.
But I do want to emphasize that, and this is based on standard parking stalls. This area right here, right off the corner of Varela, is 52 feet that we have for parking. So of course I can get 2 standard stalls in there, and the rest would be scooter parking. 3 of my cars in there, and be able to maneuver in and out. So I'm going standard. I'm not saying that we're matching everybody's car, and we're not actually striping the parking spaces. So three cars can fit here just fine.
Well, depending on what you drive.
They're gonna wipe out all that parking that people are going head in, like I said last night.
But before
So you're gonna have all those extra cars.
Before we open it to questions,
3, 4,
please,
6.
please, before we open it to questions, I need her to get to the rest of the numbers, okay? It's important that we get to the maximum you can pack in here from stop sign to stop sign, or corner to corner, all the way along.
I came up with a maximum of 46 vehicles.
And that's allowing for driveways, not proper turning radiuses for the driveways, but just parked right up against the driveway, but you can still use your driveway. Okay.
With the removal of the vehicles that would be in the line of sight, that brings that number down. But theoretically, if there were no rules or laws about, or codes about line of sight,
When you say line of sight, you mean the stop sign issue?
stop sign,
30 feet back from the line of sight.
crosswalks, the vision, the sight needed to properly maneuver through an intersection. And with removing that number, I basically come to about 47 cars that we can pack in there. But now, by removing the line of sight issues, but following standard, which I said earlier, I know you can fit more here, but I have to follow standards, because my 46 number came from a meeting where you said, well, how many cars can we pack in here? So I figured out how many cars we could pack in here. We're down to 36 spaces, which really...
And 40, 46, 47 to 36,
Yeah.
how do we get there?
By removing the line of,
The true illegal parking.
the true illegal parking.
Okay. The point is that those parking spots shouldn't exist today. Okay, they're creating safety hazards. to some extent, we come in and put stop signs there because there's a safety issue there. You can't cross the road. So we're trying to slow people down to stop at the corners so people don't get run over. But what's important here is that we're going from 36 to 36 plus scooter parking. And the reality is you can get more, because we're not going out there and saying, here's a stripe.
Are we all supposed to get scooters then?
No, but what I'm trying
What
to
does that
say
mean
to
then?
you,
It depends what you drive, I heard you say earlier.
what I'm trying to say to you is that we're not painting stripes on the road. We're not going to define the parking spot.
Maybe we should.
If you can squeeze them in now, you can squeeze them in after the project. The only thing that we're truly impacting, besides the head-end parking, is the line of sight issue. Okay, and that's
Hold on,
only
I have a
because
question.
to get in.
If you're not painting residential parking stripes, then we don't get a sticker and then anybody can park on the street too.
That includes a restaurant.
That's the other thing that we
Yeah,
wanted to
everybody
raise.
everybody will be parking in our parking
That's
places.
the other
don't even
thing that
live here.
we want to point out here. We have the ability to bring to this neighborhood a residential parking program and designate by painting on the edge of pavement residential parking only, and by signage residential parking only. Okay?
Will we have that in writing before you start this? Will we have that?
thank
Are
you.
we gonna guarantee? I have 17 bedrooms in the corner of Virginia Market. We have 70 bedrooms on the 800 block and the 900 block. You're gonna tell us you're giving us 46 parking places? We need 70 in 2 blocks.
But you need 70 now. You don't have it.
We don't. And
No, you don't.
so you're gonna take more from us? We're talking to 2 blocks, the 800 and 900 blocks. Go count your bedrooms on your city charter. Go count them.
Well,
It's 70,
I know,
sir.
I know.
So you're telling us
And
you're giving us
what about
46
the
and
2
5 blocks?
restaurants and the 2
We have
churches?
to fight with the restaurant
And the strip club.
to park.
And you ask if we put it in writing. Absolutely. Paul,
Can you give me 17
John, what
spaces?
would it take? No, I cannot. And
Okay.
when you
How
asked
many
for
do
your
you-
parking variance, did you consider
over here, John.
that you needed 7?
Don't be scared.
The city asked me to get the variance to move the building back in 1964 because they were worried about parking then. And you know that because you investigated. So in 1964, the
You got
city
a
commission
variance
was
for
worried
providing on-street parking.
to move the building back. It might not be in writing, but you know that it was moved back. And the reason it was moved back is because I was putting 8 bedrooms in that half a block.
So
And that's
my
in
point is that I can't
1964.
manufacture the parking spots. What I can do is mitigate the impact of commercial parking here. I can't come here and say 100% of this is residential parking. That you wouldn't like, because your people have visitors, and you don't want everything designated. But there's a mix that, and a residential program that can be done. And we heard that LC Bonet parks over here. I don't know whether that's...
It drifts all the way, and they're worried about when you take hours, it's going that way.
Right, and what I'm saying to you is, residential parking program will help mitigate. And will it be in writing? I imagine we could designate that before the project starts.
When you have a new development going on, how many parking spaces do they have to have for apartment or for
I
bedroom?
don't have that answer. I don't have it.
Per single-family residence in the historic district, you have to have 1 parking space.
One parking per
Off-street.
apartment.
Off-street parking
So I
space.
have 12, I have a right to have 12.
Not right, it's what you have to provide off-street to building.
Okay.
All right, that's what it is.
So we can't
you're done
reduce
with
a
screw.
parking.
Like when El Rancho tore down their
how many-
building and rebuilt it, they had to provide 1 parking space per room, and they did it by elevating and parking underneath.
Right, well, we can't elevate, we can't reduce parking spaces, you know?
What do
so-
you have to, what
You have
what
a
you
variance,
have.
so you don't have to.
And we have a lot of residencies, that's like putting on Flagler Avenue, 70 houses. This is this is not
This is
Flagler,
Flagler, high
this is
traffic.
not Duck Avenue, where they had
Right.
single
Who
family
determines
homes.
the high traffic
We have
areas? Back to
70
the
bedrooms in
basics. I
2
don't
blocks, 2
understand.
short blocks, you know? Come on, and a restaurant, and now a museum.
If ADA minimum requirements are 36 inches, why are we not just doing that all the way? I understand that you're saying they need passing room or whatever.
Turnaround.
How often do you
That's
need to
not-
have turnarounds?
That's not the minimum requirement.
It is. I read it on their site.
You have to consider what you come up in that 36 inches. When you roll out a sidewalk down the road, you have to consider what you encounter. You encounter a driveway, for instance. That 36 has to be the maximum cross slope from the property side to the front of that
How many
is
driveways
1
do
in
we have
50.
here?
Okay, 1 in 50. That's just almost flat. Okay. Now you need a driveway apron to come off of that, a little slant down
Right.
towards the pavement. That cannot be in the 36 inches. That has to be within the width of the sidewalk, though. So if I made it 4 inches, if I made it a standard sidewalks is 6 inches tall. Okay, we can cheat that down a little bit, but the standard is 6. Now, if I make it only a 4-foot sidewalk, that makes your
grade,
driveway grade like this,
Okay,
almost
so
45 degrees.
how many
45 degrees.
how many driveways do we have on this side of the street?
I think I
over
just
there?
counted 5,
5.
if I counted
So
correctly.
because of 5, we're making the sidewalk 5
No,
feet
because it's
wide.
standard, it's not only that.
There is so
I'm
much
getting this.
more to the code. Plus, what ADA gives us are minimum standards. We still have other standards and codes that we have to follow. But just hitting the ADA, we have our turnaround spaces. We have utilities that are in the right of way. Now
That's on the other
let's
side of
talk
the
about
street.
encroachment.
Oh,
If there's encroachment of foot that what the city has policy to allow, now our sidewalk's down to 2 feet. I mean, there's just things that, it's not as cut and dry as just saying 36
ADA
inches.
design is very complex, okay? To read one section, one paragraph of ADA design, I've been exposed to it for 15 years, and I am nowhere near conversant in it. I have to turn to staff and say, teach me.
You guys realize on the site where it says to go to ADA requirements for Monroe County, that's a dead site. There is no information. I mean, for us public. I was forwarded to it by you. Yeah, you told me to go to the Monroe County ADA requirements.
Can you forward that email?
Yeah,
back
it's
to
a
me?
dead site. I've checked it out, but it just makes it harder for us to understand exactly what we're trying to do here. Personally, if Varela to Watson was not included, I'd have no issue. If Mr. Keenan did not lose a 40-year-old wall and the 40 trees behind the wall and the corner of the pool and the deck and the 150-year-old avocado tree, that would be fine.
Avocado tree?
But because it's
There's
going...
no issue with that avocado tree.
Yes, it is, ma'am. Your sidewalk is on the root structure of that tree, which will cause it to die and fall in the street.
No, we will have a certified arborist.
Then-
It's required that the contractor do that, and that tree, if need be, will be root proof.
I
And it'll be
suggest...
looked at, so.
I suggest
that's not
exempting
safe
that
for
block
the
like you've exempted the block from Varela to White, where Sandy's has head-in parking.
We
that-
didn't exempt it. We
Well,
didn't have the
you're
money.
not including it in this list here.
That is included in that
Yeah.
money.
To go from
I don't see Sandy here tonight.
When we bid this project,
He was here.
we bid option A and option B. Option A was to go to Windsor to Jose Marti. Option B was to go from Windsor to Varela, because we wanted to see what the bids would come in at, what we were going to get. We could not afford option A. We could afford option B. So we did try to go
You
all
have
the
a
way.
very good sidewalk all the way along
Oh,
Grandview
yeah.
Park. Why would you have to destroy
Well,
that?
actually, it's
Why would
not
that be more
a very
expensive
good
than over
sidewalk.
here?
You
It's
may
not a
think,
I walked it a lot. That's
yeah,
why.
but we have cross slope issues. I mean, in front of the old Mr. Gatto's building, it's in horrible shape. We have issues with cross slopes at driveways that no longer exist. I mean, there are issues.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, sir.
Let's assume for a moment that the current number of parking spaces, excluding the illegally parked line of sight issues, let's say it's a wash, right, in terms of parking spaces. give or take.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. When this museum opens for business, okay, this is going to take the amount of traffic in this neighborhood and dramatically increase it. My question would be, do they have a variance for parking spaces, or do they have to build a parking lot here to accommodate the people that are coming so it doesn't impact all the people in the neighborhood?
I had arranged for the planner, or tried to arrange for the planner to come tonight and answer that type of question.
Yeah.
That's a question that we're gonna write down and get you and answer. Okay. But I suspect they're gonna have to provide one or the other in order to open. Okay. They haven't opened because they have to get donations to bring their building up to the front. For instance, an ADA stairway and an elevator share up that stairway, ADA bathrooms, et cetera, They've been chipping away at the list all along. ADA sidewalk into their building, still not complete. It has to connect to something, okay, in order for it to be compliant. So that was one of my first questions at the last meeting we had here, and I actually talked to Alex about it. There's some problems with it. I've also talked to the planning department about it. There's some problems with the parking lot. It's not as easy as you would think. The last time I proposed a parking lot to solve a front-end parking on a project of production, and it wasn't permissible in that district. I can't answer the question. I'm not zoning, I'm not a planner, and I can't go there, but we can get you there.
That's one of the reasons why I asked if there was a feasibility study. And I believe if you had a feasibility study, that there'd be a different decision made. We have a fundamental problem in that, maybe a couple of them, in that the pedestrian action committee did not survey the neighborhood, did not advise the neighbors that they were going to make this decision. And that decision was made arbitrarily. Now it's after the fact that you're informing the folks it's going to happen. It should have been before the fact.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, totally.
We all agree. 207 people agree, actually.
Yeah.
I took in 90 signatures myself.
Thank you. 237.
Go ahead, Christine.
You know, I think that there's a lot of people in the community that look for common sense and logic. You know, I live 3 doors. I live on Grinnell. But I look at Varela and I see it as a highly functioning street. It has sidewalks, it has parking. My next block, you know, I have sidewalks. I want to tell you my sidewalk is 36 inches. I have a driveway apron with the slope that you're talking about. I think most of the sidewalks are 36 inches. The next block of Grinnell has no sidewalks. So I think there's a lot of people in town. One of the reasons I'm here, because this is my neighborhood, we look at Bahama Village, we look at so many streets in this town that have no sidewalks, and here we're talking about tearing up, I won't say perfectly good sidewalks, but we're looking for some logic, and we're looking for a government that isn't so adversarial with the people who are the taxpayers. We're looking for some common sense and common ground. Now, from the city's point, I understand you had a lawsuit. You have to do something about it. I don't think there's anybody sitting out here that doesn't want people in wheelchairs and things to have access. But you got gravel on a lot of these streets. Go down to Bahama Village. So, you know, I think these neighbors should list one item at a time and find some common ground with the city. You know, these people live here. I live here. You're talking about their lives 24 hours a day. You know, I look at your chart here, and on the corner of Grinnell, my corner, it's not my corner, but it's not even on Varela, it's around the corner, they're taking out 2 palm trees.
Where is that?
Right here. Unless I'm reading it wrong, it's not even on Varela.
That's actually on Grinnell, because if you look at Grinnell, on that side of the street, there's an existing sidewalk that stops.
I know
what
where that
we're
is.
doing, we're tying into that sidewalk so we have a continuous path. It would be silly for the city to leave 15 feet of grass between 2 sidewalks. So we're making that connection. Those trees, most likely, will be relocated.
That's
which
nice
is
for us
good.
to hear that. Let me
But
talk about...
that's why those trees...
Let me talk about the block that's down by Watson, because I noticed that your right-of-way on a lot of these blocks is 50 foot.
Yes.
Including the one down by, is it Watson, where you're gonna tear down walls? There's
The
another
corner of
right-of-way
Watson,
that's
yes.
40 feet. Can't we make that 40 feet? I mean, are you willing to work with these neighbors and not disrupt their lives and come in and tear? You know, I looked on the website today. That the appraiser's website lists that wall was built in 1979 or 1980.
Built in 80, yes.
Okay, so was it permitted? Did the city come out and sign off? I mean,
It was permitted as a 61-foot wall. And if you go and measure the wall, it is 68 and a half feet wall. Unfortunately, at that time, when permits were put in for walls, pools, items like that, we didn't require a survey for some reason. And then when someone comes out and looks at it, yep, it's a good wall. Why it was that way, I don't know. The same with the pool. You know, they submitted in 1984 for a pool. It was built in 1985. What they submitted was a sketch indicating to the city that the property line was a wall.
So what you're saying
So-
is that 7 foot of the
7.5
wall,
feet.
it's not actually 7 foot into the property? I'm confused.
The wall
It's 7.5 feet over
into city property.
City right away.
And the city didn't argue that when it was built? They didn't come out and look at it and say...
The representation on the permit was that was on their property.
Yes.
No survey was presented, and the wall was built. Then, a year later,
About 4 or 5 years later.
4 years later, a pool permit was applied for, and they represented on that the wall was their property line. Okay? A survey, when we surveyed, we showed the 7.5 foot over. We asked the people in the neighborhood to provide any surveys that disputed it. We actually got a survey from the property owner, I think through you, that showed that at their closing, they were on notice that they were 7.5 feet over
The
in
day
the city
prior
right
to
away.
closing.
But everything encroaches. We all know everything encroaches in Old Town. When I had my closings, I hired an attorney. I said, "Oh God, I'm not going to buy that property. That encroaches." And then I learned everything encroaches here.
Sure.
But I have a specific question. If you have a block that you have a 40-foot right-of-way, and you have another block that you have a 50-foot right-of-way, which is this block in question we're going to take down the wall, will you be willing to compromise with these people and say, okay, for that block, we'll work with a 40-foot right-of-way because we have it on other blocks that we're going to work? Will you work with these people?
For 2.5 months, Christine, we've been working with the attorney representing the owner of the pool. Okay? The last contact with that attorney was yesterday, but between the end of September and yesterday, no contact. We actually proposed a settlement agreement or a mitigation agreement to the property owner. And as of yet, we haven't gotten a response on it.
I spoke to Mr. Keenan this afternoon. It seems that your end is not responding to his calls.
Yeah, we
He's tried to contact you, Karen. He's tried to contact
I
you.
spoke with Mr. Keenan.
That's interesting because
Well, I'm talking about as of this afternoon.
That's interesting because I spoke to him yesterday.
Okay.
Okay? Terry Johnston spoke to him yesterday.
Yes, and he's not very
Okay.
happy about that either.
And the reality is, we're supposed to, once they engage an attorney, as staff,
Oh, you're only
we're
supposed to talk to their
allow
attorney.
them to negotiate with attorney to attorney.
Okay.
Okay, so for us to negotiate settlements with Mr. Keenan on the sidebar, excluding our attorney, is not the
It's
way
a little gray
it
area.
works.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay?
I understand.
It was his choice to either engage an attorney or not. We proposed a settlement. We proposed the maximum workaround. It actually has an impact on parking.
So what is the
but
maximum workaround? I mean,
the
question was asked about
reality
doing a
is
40-foot.
walls are not sacred. The pool, we're trying to save the pool. Okay? We're trying to save the pool.
Let's try to save this whole block. And we could really move on. We have no argument,
if I may.
David, we have no argument against the sidewalk. We feel it's necessary. We know there's funding for it now. In 2025 is when it's mandated that everything has to be done. Of course it's going to cost more money than concrete costs more money daily. what can we do to make this all work out? Is it going to be a one-way street with a bike path that everybody wants?
That's a
I
good
mean,
discussion.
what's the bottom line?
I have more flexibility, and I tried at the last meeting and the first meeting, I tried to suggest that one-way gives more flexibility. My staff wants to kick me in the knee for talking about one-way, because that's not what they designed for.
I know, but it's a good thing.
But
the neighbors don't complain over that.
What's
Your knee will
makes
heal.
sense,
Don't
but
worry
I
about
didn't get the feedback from the group, because it takes consensus. That's a big
The way it was
change for
left,
them.
I thought you were actually going to look at a one-way. I thought that was
They were saying,
going, yeah,
they said
that's
that,
what
I recommended we
thought it
look
was left.
at a one-way. I had one couple that told me they liked the one-way. One couple that told me they liked the one-way concept.
What's the impact of the local?
Pardon?
That change.
It makes it much easier, for instance, on a 40-foot right-of-way. It makes it much easier to get parking on both sides. The reality in that 40 feet, we're only getting an ADA compliant sidewalk on one side. But it's easier, it's less pressure. It means that if you're over 12 inches with a concrete knee wall, I don't have to take it out.
Right.
Okay? It means I can lessen the impact. If in the absence of one way, I need every bit of 40 feet to get one sidewalk, two parking lanes, to
And I
parking
really
on
need
either
to
side.
But with a 40-foot right-of-way, when we go to put the sidewalks on the other side, that's one way, one lane of traffic, or one lane of parking. That is not parking on both sides of the street.
We're not, one way we...
Only a 50-foot right away.
No, wait a minute, no.
Yeah.
It's a pavement issue, right? That why we can't go to parking on both
It has
sides.
to do with emergency
God.
vehicles, yes.
There we go then.
Actually, Sandy came tonight. I had extensive conversations with him, and we'll talk some more. The impact on Sandy's, for instance, is you can't build a compliant sidewalk behind. I hope we get to take a breather and spend some time on pavement, but that's the next.
The other thing about that is that the code continually changes, and it's always for the better. Key West was built without houses. We don't have those anymore. We're now required to have a sanitary sewer. We used to drink out of cisterns, and now we have potable water with standards and everything. So the same thing with the sidewalks and the traffic. These things will improve the livability of Key West. You know, the most valuable property values in Key West are houses and streets that have beautiful sidewalks. So it's not a negative thing. The fact that cars park helter skelter, eventually that will all come into compliance, just like the electricity in your house comes into compliance. You have grounded electricity now. So the code continually changes. Everything changes over time. And our streets and our right-of-ways also change over time. And to resist it is a natural instinct from people. Because, my fence has been there for 30 years. I don't see what the problem is. But the truth is that we're all headed in a direction. And the pressures come not just from the city, not just from the federal government, but from every angle to push us that way. And while we have a group of people that live on the street right now talking about this, the pressures elsewhere in the city are different. And they want places that they can walk and bike and push their kids in stroller. In front of my house, a sidewalk project came through. And I was flabbergasted. I said, why does it need a sidewalk? People don't even walk down the street.
You're being nice to yourself.
And arguing with her about my driveway. Before I came to work with the city. But I can tell you now that I have a sidewalk there, people walk through there that I've never seen before in my life.
and it becomes a much better environment. I guess they used to walk in the street, you know? But that's my story.
I just came back from Marblehead 3 or 4 months ago, and that's one of the pilgrim, permits and all that stuff. If you put sidewalks in there, and they must have the same rules, they're federal, state too also, there's no way you can put a car. Because the houses are built on the street because they were built for wagons. So you either have cars or you have people walking on the street because you can't have the sidewalks. And that's Marblehead. And they have the same regulations. So that's another little funky town that they worked it out. And the people walk on the street. They have a few sidewalks, but not many. And there's no way you could put them in. And that's another little funky town,
I can
just
only
like Key
assume that
West.
they didn't have some of the ADA litigants that we had in Key West.
So we got sacrificed then. This street got
We got
sacrificed.
targeted.
We got targeted.
Targeted is
So
the
give
better-
us somebody, and unfortunately, it was us.
There was a series of ADA lawsuits in Key West.
And what about Key West?
Key West was historical also.
Yes, sir.
This is another.
I was at the meeting last night, and thank you for explaining why you're not extending sidewalks.
Not to exceed 30,000. Okay? And we could go back to the judge and ask, we don't want sidewalks on Virginia Street. Okay? Assuming that there's nobody in town that represents the litigants.
Litigant is not in town anymore.
One of the litigants. There were more than one. Okay, and the attorney from Orlando makes a living on these lawsuits, right? So the attorney in Orlando who gets the notice would love to litigate, right? And so the likelihood that it's litigated, I can't speak to. I'm not the attorney. But that's the process. You would have to unring that bell. And that bell's harder to unring than it is to ring.
Sure. However, if I would assume that anyone I would assume a judge with any reasonable approach, so long as the same amount of sidewalk is being converted, the judge doesn't care whether it's this side, whether it's that street, this street, if indeed the same amount of investment is being made, right? No?
The point is, with the encroachments on the other side, we would be having the same meeting, different people.
And you're not done, because you can, what you really have to do, you don't want these sidewalks, what you really have to do is convince a federal judge you don't want these sidewalks, okay? Because whether it's here first or there first, both sides of the road have to be done, okay? It's in the plan. It's not one side or the other, okay? And that's the reality. Okay?
Where's the priorities?
So the fact that it's on this side first, it's on this side first. And if you stop the project and say, no, do them first, that's fine. Somebody else's backyard, do them first.
But why are we prioritized
What is the
first?
plan?
That's my
Whose
question.
plan? Whose plan is this?
Yes.
To make sidewalks where you can't drive or park your car? Whose plan?
The judge.
Why is
He
it
gave the plan to
prioritized
Key
here?
West, and then he would do it to Marblehead, and St. Augustine, I imagine, had the same
Right,
problem.
exactly.
Yes, St. Augustine,
What I'm trying to explain
right?
Right,
is
tell
that
him, Charlie.
when the judge said, come up with a list.
My
and
point is that because I was not
With or without the
directly
project?
contacted early on, today I'm paying the price of $250. And if this thing isn't out of the way, by December the 15th, I'm going to be fined $250 a day from there on out. And guess what? It takes 2 HARC approvals. The last meeting we had in October, you said you would get HARC involved in this process. It never happened. It never happened.
I have talked, what I stated I would do, I would talk to the building department and the HARC departments, and this was solely about fences and relocation and permits for these fences. And I did, and I still don't have all the answers I
And
need.
the fact that it takes 2 hearings to accomplish something through HARC.
Now, for a demolition permit of a structure, whether it was built with the permit, and some of this I can't pretend to understand, okay? I can't stand here and pretend that I can tell you why you can build a building without permit, without HARC approval, then you need 2 approvals to tear it down. I don't understand that. I'm not trying to apply logic to government, okay? I am not, okay? I'm here to tell you that those are the rules. I can't unring or undo those rules,
It's
okay?
cost me $250. It could cost me thousands,
But,
depending on how
let me address, unrelated to code cases, because that code case would have happened whether this project happened or not. It's coincidental that it came to their attention at this time.
If I knew the severity and how hard work, I could have done something to avoid all of this because I could have been proactive. I made the mistake of assuming that you would in fact feed back to us, deliver back on promises, and I was a fool for that.
On October 13th,
and it was too late on
I
October
gave you a
13th.
phone number. I asked you to call Don. I asked you to come in and see him.
It was too late.
It was not. Because you wouldn't have been there today and in front of the special master, you might have made a different decision. You might have made a HARC application on your own. You might have determined that what your options were.
They didn't think it was the correct one.
The bottom line is that for the other properties, because that's decided by special master, I cannot address that, okay? But what we did do is go to HARC and the management and the planning department. And what was agreed upon is we don't have rights to waive building permits or fees associated with the changes, the moving of the fences, that kind of thing. What we do have, or the process is that we go to the city commission with a resolution and ask for the fees to be waived so that we can mitigate the impact. We can, and we're committing to assisting in the application process, technical advice on how to get the application through, so you're not out having to hire consultants to process. Some things may be approvable at the staff level. Those things will be approved at the staff level. But those things, the only reason we haven't taken a resolution before the commission to get there is because there was a resolution instead to cancel the project.
Excuse me, David, there's a corner of Watson and Catherine where Sonny McCoy owned the property that was mandated. The city gave him the property there? So that, I mean, it has been done.
At what decade?
I don't know, 20 years ago.
Meanwhile, in order to sell city property now, there's restrictions. And we can't do it, it takes a referendum. It's not that it can't be done, it takes a referendum.
Okay, so it can be done.
Okay, the bottom
David,
line,
aren't there instances where people have rented?
they're called easements.
Right.
Right.
Why was line of sight? I mean, you had plans. You had to know that I was encroaching. Kid Robert.
Paul, you knew that you were encroaching.
To tell you the truth, no, because I've been there for 48 years.
I actually had a conversation
48
with you.
years.
I met you on site when you were placing the handicap ramps.
Right.
And it was discussed then, and you were aware of that.
Not of my other parking. You were talking about me putting in a handicap ramp. I was never worried about the parking.
But we talked about where the property line was. You were aware that you were encroaching.
No, I just had to have a
You stated to me that you built those planners aware that they were in the right of way.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Sorry. No, I didn't say that because I told you that I replaced them before they were rocks and before they were dark red pavers. And the insurance company asked me to
here,
fix it.
we don't know anything.
Yeah, well, you know what? I go back to where I came.
One of your people that are involved in the sidewalks told me we've learned a lot from Flag Avenue. You know, that's not like painting your house. Oh, I painted it the wrong color. 5 years later, I'm going to paint it another color. You make mistakes, Flagler or here or anywhere else, we've got to live with it. My grandchildren are going to live with it. It's not like painting your house. And so please think of, say, oh, we learned, you know. And I was told that by you're gonna have a jog there. Flagler doesn't go underwater. So when you jog from when you jog from the 900 block to the 800 block, you're going almost in a 45. So who comes along and that's underwater and doesn't know this city is going over the sidewalk. You have, yes, David, look at the, for one,
It is true.
that'll be underwater.
And it's gonna be the same thing at Watson.
But I think Juliana's mentioned it last night. Why in the world would the city of Key West come up to that illegal wall and build a new sidewalk?
Without
Thank you for your
benefit of
time.
survey, I can't.
See what I mean? I don't know how we're gonna fix the past here, David. I know you guys want to move forward with your project, and we don't want to block it any longer than necessary, but all we're getting out of tonight's meeting is we're gonna have to go again. Now more lawyers are gonna be brought in, and apparently if Keenan has a lawyer now, each one of these people should have one.
Well,
And that's just another.
We're gonna have that settlement. But there's been no response.
I'm gonna try to provoke both sides to come to a middle. I know, I really have no interest in any of this. I'm here to document it. I like the truth to be known. I know you both have jobs to do, and I like to see that you do. But we're just tenants. If that pool has no fence around it, and handicapped people are coming down the sidewalk and falling in the pool, I don't care. They're welcome to come to any party I throw, fence or
Just
no
for the
fence.
record, Florida law requires
I
a
know.
minimum 6-foot
And
fence.
Keenan's-
By the way,
Keenan's not gonna pull one back on
allow that
a
minimum
6-foot fence.
But we've got a resolution to that because Florida law trumps hard.
We have too many laws.
That's what she's moving to Panama.
Well, of course they would. But you know, we as taxpaying citizens don't want you giving land to other people. You know, encroachments happen. But can they buy some land? You do a 36-foot sidewalk on the wall. Oh God, David, it can't happen. Not in our lifetime. Not in this economy. You know that. You can't do every sidewalk around and replace it. They're functional.
What I will ask you to do is go to the website, read the ADA settlement agreement, and understand two things. The first thing, we're obligated to spend $500,000.
I understand.
On that.
I understand.
The second thing is we're obligated to That's a federal document. If you think in this community, because it's an alleyway, all the people that are pedestrian access and other
And I'm for that.
okay, if you think that they're going to sit by and that's and say, you know, Judge, we didn't really mean it. We're not going to do this.
Well, I will tell you that by 2025, our economy will have collapsed. And I'll come back, I'll have a coffee with you, and I'll say, I don't want, and I'll say, I told you so.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't expect to do it. You know, I just,
It's on your way, Dwayne.
you could have, that doesn't make them right. Okay, the law says.
You know, I'm using a 5-foot sidewalk.
Cherry Walk might not.
I can, we have pictures here. Go down south.
What are other historic towns doing that?
But you got a little Italian in you.
Yes, I can't walk on the
With a name like that?
slides like that, but you know what? I don't live in a perfect world, so we have single file, and we're okay, you know. We're above that curve where we're not gonna kill.
No, this will maintain, and I don't have the design, I just have a sketched design of this one. I don't have it on the computer, but this will be constructed, and you'll see a bulb out, similar to something like this here.